just a bit of an intro. Throughout this video, I'm gonna make mention to a trick known as wing tacking. If you don't know what that is, essentially it's with wings, air boosting, and then immediately spearing. So that's a wing tech, that's a singular wing tech, and then doing it over and over, that's wing tacking. It's a pretty simple trick. I'd recommend learning it if you plan on running wings. It's really useful. It's used in a fair amount of the tricks in this video. And also, the order of the levels are not... This is not the order I run them in. This is just the order that felt like it made the most sense to me. It's kind of in order of difficulty, more in difficulty of explanation, because I didn't want to explain the hardest ones first. Also, there are some levels, namely Kingdom Valley 1 and Sunset Heights 1, that don't really have any big wing skips, so they aren't in this video. And the Radical Highways have much better explanations by people who are much better than the levels than me. I will link them in the description. Yeah, that's it. On to the video. Okay, so we're gonna start off with SH2 Skip. There's two versions of this. I am going to go over the easy one first, and then I'll go over the hard one. So starting off, you're gonna need at least 50 rings. Once you get to this red ring, take the red ring, get up here. You see this slanted wall jump thing. Pop wings here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump left air boost while holding left into it. Shadow's gonna slant up on the wall. When we see that, we're gonna hold up, ground boost jump, and just hold the jump, okay? So, up. And when we see this dip here in Shadow's boost aura, that means he's hit the peak of his jump. So now we need to double jump and wing tech to the right. Cool. We land on here, let our boost refill. So what we're going to do next is we're going to ground boost jump, hold the jump for a while, then stop boosting to let our boost recover, double jump, and then just fly. So ground boost jump, hold it, double jump, fly. And once we get to that turn, we're going to stop flying, spear, and once we get here, we get the choice between the two different skips. But first, I'm going to go over what I just did there, because it was really quick. I didn't have time to pause. So what you want to do there is you're essentially jumping over the 2D pull-in trigger. That's why you have to do that double jump. It's because you need the height, basically. Otherwise, you'll just get caught on it. You'll get sucked back into the level. And that's what happens anyway. When you stop boosting, you will get sucked back into the level. I'm going to turn my mic down. I keep peeking it. But yeah, so you get sucked back into the level when you stop boosting. So you need to make sure you're far away enough from the level where even though it sucks you in, it doesn't manage to pull you in fully. And there's not really a guide for that, if I'm being honest. It's just kind of vibes based. Unfortunately, you'll learn it with practice. So once you think you're in the right position, stop flying, start spearing, and hopefully it will pull you in, but you will miss the collision and you will just fall through. And now we've escaped the 2D trigger, which is something that will come up a lot, which I'm going to go over now. Essentially, I might be wrong because I haven't gone into the game's code or whatever. I haven't looked at this with dev tools either. But as far as I know, this game's 2D works by essentially having this big ass box around the level, being like, when Shadow is in this box, he is 2D. And then when you go out the box, it defaults to 3D. And you might be asking, why is it like that if there's absolutely no reason why he would need to change between 2D and 3D in normal gameplay? That's a really good question, but that's just how it is. I'm assuming it's a leftover from Frontiers. So right now, we're out of bounds, and we've escaped the 2D plane. You can see the camera's gone free cam, which is a good sign that you've escaped the 2D plane. So now I'm going to do the easy version. We're basically just going to fly into the later section of the level, all the way to the sewers. All right. Let's hope I can actually do this right after a pause. This is also why you need to jump far instead of just being able to fly to the out of bounds, because if you fly, you're not going to have enough boost to make this. You also, I should have mentioned, you need a chaos control before you do this. Otherwise, you will run out of boost and die. So now just want to fly, spam, right side step. If the level stops existing, that's fine. That's normal. Then once, again, you really can't see anything. Once you're in that position, you can just spear glide back in. And boom, you're later in the level. Good job, GG's. Okay, we are back here to go over the hard version now. So as I said earlier, the hard version is going to be pretty similar. First off, we do the jump, boost jump, double jump, fly, wait a bit and spear glide. And that is what happens when you spear glide too early, so don't do that. Spear glide, try not to get pulled in. And then, now that we're here again, this is normally, just that we've got free cam now, this is normally where the easy skip would fly. We're not going to do that. We're going to wait a bit and wait until you see this jagged stone wall thing. It's going to abruptly cut off the vertical cutoff. When shadow is the same height as the vertical cutoff, that's when we need to start flying. So, and we're also going to fly straight aligned with the 2D plane, basically, to shadow's left. 90 degrees to shadow's left. Which is the camera's right, but, you know. Now, keep flying. You want to move right. If you move too far right, the world's going to go out of view. You don't want... You need to see the world for a setup later on. But you also want to be pretty far right. So, move as far right as you can without the world popping out of view. And use a chaos control for extra distance. So, you see these, like, pillar things, this red tube and this gray and black striped thing. That's what we're going to be using for our lineup. If you've got the vertical height right, shadow should be about vertically aligned with this black strip. Maybe not perfect, but about aligned. And this loop-de-loop of rails is what we're going to be exploiting. So, what we're going to do, we're going to boost. Now that we're on the right position horizontally, we saw the world go out, moved slightly further back in. We're going to fly forward until you see about this area, just where the red tube hits the gray. I don't know. What is that meant to be? Is that like foundation or something? I don't know. I'm not a city maker. But yeah, you want to stop flying about when you see this line hit the edge of the camera, and you're going to spear glide thrice, and then you're going to get picked up by the automation of the tube, and it might throw you into a death plane. The reason we position like we do is to avoid that, but you know, if you mess up your position or you mess up your timing, it might happen. There's also a chance that you aren't high enough to do the second part, which is also basically death. But, you know, try not to do that. So, I'm going to fly, spear glide, get thrown up. Now, I got height. Being high enough is basically just being above, like, this area of the rail. And I didn't die. Great. Good job. So, now, I'm going to basically just fly directly into this, like, intersection of the rail. It is going to absolutely throw me up with insane speed, and then I'm going to air boost and just keep spear gliding about along the 2D plane, slightly to the left, so that you can avoid some death planes and hit the goal ring easier. Just fucking, you'll get fucking sent, honestly. That's the best way I can describe it. Absolutely fucking sent. Keep in mind, you want to fly. And, like, look at me. I'm absolutely going. This is a very high launch, so I'm actually going to wait a bit and lose the speed so I don't overshoot. Using spears to get me faster gravity. And keep in mind, this rail is the first thing to pop in. On a low launch, you would be about aligned with this rail. But on a high launch, you want to look down and keep an eye out for it. And when that rail is your target, basically. You can go for the goal ring. And, like, if you learn where the goal ring is and you can go for it, great, that saves a bit of time. But the rail pops in a lot earlier than the goal ring does, so it's safer to go for. It's good as a guide, right? So I'm going to land back in the 2D plane, and I might get stuck on the ceiling, but that's fine. I will just fall into the goal ring. Yep, just get him. Fall into the goal ring, and that's it. Good job. Good level. Okay, so now moving on to Kingdom Valley 2. you see the section where the 3 springs take you into the background. You're going to want wings and a chaos control here. What we're going to do is we're going to take the spring, and then once we're done with the final spring, we're going to double jump, then wing tech twice into the pillar to the left. So double jump, wing tech twice, and we should just slide up. Make sure you're holding left as you hit the pillar. You can also, if you fail this, you can just take the spring again and try it again. So now that we're on top of the spear, you see how Shadow kind of stuck to the pillar on the left before he got up? We're going to use that to do a similar thing we did in Sunset Heights 2 and just jump up and then wing tech over here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a round where the second dash pad is on this upcoming loop that you would normally be ground level with, but we are on top of. And this is going to freak the game out and give Shadow very big uppies. So you just jump down, up he goes, and you can't see it at all. There you go. This pause screen is being very annoying. You see these pillars in the background that the pause screen is covering a lot. This castle area that we would normally be playing in. You want to line yourself up with that and just spear glide. Just a single boost, single air boost, and just keep spear gliding. So like this is a bit misangle, so I'll change my angle. And then what I like to do is once I notice Shadow started falling, I take a note of the in-game time, which I didn't actually get the chance to here because the pause menu was covering it. I think it was like a 125. And then I count about 4 or 5 seconds after. And then when I see that, so it'll be about like a 129, 130. That's when I'm just going to start flying. Same direction as before. Oh, that was early. Oopsies. And then use Chaos Control Distance. And then hopefully stop flying when you have about like 2 or 3 air boosts left in your gauge so you can realign once you make it. Just keep spear gliding. The level should pop in. And then use your boost to reorient yourself and say hello to the goal ring. And that's it. That's the level. Good job. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Chaos Island 2. Normally I wouldn't include the ring routing, but it's actually... the ring routing is part of the glitch itself, so I do need to put it here. Normally you would take this blue morph orb. That's purple. Normally you would take that purple morph orb and go into the background. We don't want to do that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to stay in the foreground and kill those 3 enemies, get all the rings. We should have about 30 rings here. I have 33, which is the maximum. And then take that ramp, pop wings, and kill those 2 enemies. You should have Chaos Control and wings at this point. Now, I'm going to call this skip I Forgor Skip because the only reason it exists is because the developers forgot to add an invisible wall. You can just fly backwards. And because the developers weren't expecting you to have wings earlier on in this level, because they, I guess, forgot an invisible wall, the death plane is actually a lot lower than it should be. So what you can do is you can fall off of this platform. I'm going to ground boost off of this platform. I'm going to, once I fall off, I'm going to double jump, bonk my head on this, and then I'm going to air boost spear glide. Cool. Now we're in free cam. Once you enter free cam, you do want to wait a slight amount of time before you start flying, as even though the death play doesn't actually cover the actual death, it does cover some random, generally high up section out of bounds for some reason. So you'll want to wait a bit, and then once you've waited, you just want to fly in this general direction. Exact direction does not matter. Use Chaos Control to extend the flight. And now I have 2 options here. I can either take a right and use the Morph Orb to get back in bounds, which is a bit slow, but if you don't have enough height, if you're pretty low ground, it's what you should be doing, as this allows you to homing attack a Morph Orb and get back in bounds even if you don't have height. But what I'm going to do instead, because I have height, I'm going to go for this metal box over here. There's platforms all under it. You can't see them right now, but they do exist. So it's relatively safe if you have the height. And boom. That's it. That's a skip. You can just play the rest of the level as normal now. Okay, so now on to a hopefully quicker one, which is KV1 Volcano Skip. You're gonna want to have wings and a chaos control before this point with the rails, with the volcano cutscene and everything. And so you're gonna want to not homing attack onto this rail. It's often easier to you'll get more consistent results by not homing attacking, jumping in a bit. And what we're gonna do is we're going to jump on the rail, take the booster pad, and for some reason that gives you like 90 speed. So we're going to neutral jump off the rail once we've got the speed, and then just fly using the chaos control to maintain that flight, and you will just keep going. It's often easier to wing tech once just to make sure you don't get caught on the automation, because sometimes you can get caught on the automation. It's a pain. Wing tech will prevent that for the first one. And yeah, that's it. That's literally it. It saves so much time, so much more time than it really should. It's pretty easy. Okay, so now we're moving on to RC2 with RC2 fling. And there's two versions of this wings can do. There's an easy but slow version, and there's a hard but fast version. I'm going to go over the easy version first. So you're going to want to have wings and a chaos control, and you're just going to want to fly. You see Shadow get pushed down by the automation. As soon as you notice him getting pushed down, you double jump up. Do not touch anything else. Just let him go up. And yeah, that's basically it. Now all we're going to do for the next like 30 to 60 seconds is just, I think it's only 30 seconds actually, is just spear glide forward until we hit the goal. Once Shadow has stopped descending, now you just keep going. You want to make sure you're pretty high so that you don't hit the slowdown trigger for the cutscene, the final cutscene. And then you're going to hit the rail, and GG's, you beat the level. So now I'm going to go over the hard version. So for the hard version, you actually don't need a chaos control. And this is a lot quicker. So what we're going to do, I'm going to explain it first because I won't have time to pause. What we're going to do is we're going to ground boost off this platform. Once we start falling off, we're going to wing tech 5 times. You've got to make sure your spears are perfect. Late spears will make you get too much height, which is bad. I fear I was being a bit silly when I made this method, and it turns out I've tested it, and wing teching 4 times is a lot easier than doing it 5 times. I was wrong. Oopsies. Do it 4 times for the sake of your sanity. Okay, thanks. So once we wing tech 4 times, we're going to double jump, wait like half a second, and then throw a spear. If you spear too early, you get absolutely no height, and you will hit, and you will just die. And if you spear too late, you'll get too much height, and you won't get any speed, which is pretty slow. You can recover a high launch by just doing the easy method if you have a chaos control to use, but it's pretty slow, so I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm gonna go for it now. And that is an example of spearing too early. Okay, so I'm gonna try that again, and I hopefully won't spear too early this time. So now, once you see this final rail is just, it's this single rail that's your sign that you should stop spearing. Because you want to, if the game will effectively just keep pushing you, you can overshoot the goal ring, and overshooting the goal ring also means being right next to the goal ring, but you can't move backwards because you're still in automation, and you don't want that to happen. So now, this is kind of a judgment call, unfortunately. I can't really give you a definitive guide as to when you need to stop spearing, because it depends on how fast you're going, how high you are, all that stuff. So it's just a judgment call. So I think here is a pretty safe time to stop spearing. And now, if I want to fall fast, I need to keep throwing spear once I've lost the speed. You've got to make sure you lose the speed before you start spearing again. Otherwise, you will keep the speed and you will overshoot. But that is how you fall fast, which is really only important here. So I land on the rail, and boom, it's the goal ring. Good job. Okay, so now we're moving on to Rail Canyon 1. Pretty important part of this stage is ring routing, because you're going to need a lot for a skip coming up. But I will just, I'd recommend you just watch my current PB for that. if you're curious, I will link it in the description, because explaining that would take a really long time, and this level is going to take long enough to explain anyway. So instead, what we're going to do is first skip immediately. Instead of taking the rail that normally forces you into the Radical Highway cutscene with Shadow and Black Doom, instead, we're just going to spear glide to the left. And how the cutscene normally works is that you would hit this dash pad, which opens the door, which the pause menu is blocking. And that door is supposed to stop you from doing exactly what we're about to do. But the devs were silly, and they made the door open trigger slightly bigger than the dash pad trigger. So you can avoid the dash pad and still open the door, and because the dash pad is what puts you into the cutscene, you can avoid the cutscene and still open the door, which is what we're going to do. Now, keep in mind that will take your wings. The door open trigger is a wings removal trigger as well. And there's one final thing to keep in mind with this door. They did actually predict that we would try something like this. So they made it so that if you're grinding on a rail and you hit that open door when you're not in the cutscene, you will get bounced back and forced into the cutscene. But the problem with that is that you can just jump. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to go over it. And boom. Now we can just spear glide into Radical Highway. Okay, so this trick is what you needed the 90 rings for. Yeah, as I said earlier, wing routing is very important. Look at my most recent PB if you want to see good ring routing for this level. You're going to want at least 80 to 85 rings, preferably 90 or above, before you go for this skip. And what we are going for is called ESP, Edgehog Space Program. Basically, Shadow gets very big uppies. And we're using wings and a keyboard, sorry, console runners, to make this a lot easier. So how we're going to do this, we're going to take this red rail, take the red ring, and then just fly onto the road. Leftmost position. Now, what we're going to do, Shadow's going to slip, fall down a little bit. Once he stops, we're going to ground boost up. Just tap a ground boost to get the speed. And then just before we start to hit this dash pad, this leftmost dash pad, we're going to jump off of the road, and we're going to air boost straight into the dash pad. Okay, I kind of fucked that up, so we're going to go for it again. There you go. And normally in a real run, you wouldn't be able to make that many mistakes because you'd be running out of rings too quickly, but luckily I was able to save it because 900 rings. Thank you, Chaos Spear. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use W and A on my keyboard to turn around directly up left, and then I am going to just air boost and spear glide in that direction. And this is kind of all we do for like 30 seconds, so I'm just going to skip until the next important input happens. Okay, so now that the camera has turned to face down, the level's about to pop in soon. The cannons of the level are about to pop in soon. When we see them, we're going to stop spear gliding, use W and D to turn upright, and then air boost and spear glide again. But for now, because I haven't popped in, I'm going to keep spear gliding. And now here they are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I keep track of the in-game time before I go. You want to add about 15 seconds to your current timer, and that's when you want to stop. So you want to be spear gliding for about 15 seconds. Keep track of your time when you boost, mind you, not when the cannons pop in. It's when you boost that you want to keep track of your time. So upright and boost. So I boosted about 140, so we're going to go until about 155. And that's 155, so I'm going to stop, just let Shadow fall. The level will pop in soon. And now I'm going to double jump, use this height to gain my bearings, use reset camera 2, and just kind of use my knowledge of the level geometry to fly around until the camera resets here, and boom, that's the end of the level. That final part of using camera knowledge is very much a case of just, not camera knowledge, level knowledge. That's very much a case of just practice. If you are familiar with the level geometry, it'll be easier for you. If you aren't so familiar, it may be more difficult. Practice a couple times, you'll get a good vibe. And also, it's very good to remember what the final building looks like, so you know what you're aiming for. So now we're going to go for an alt strat. This strat does not require having as many rings as ESP, but it is a lot more inconsistent. So, you know, go for it if you want. It is a fair, I'd say it's a fair amount easier, even if it is more inconsistent, and it saves about the same amount of time. But truly, it's a case of it's a case of not wanting to rely on luck. This strat does feel like luck a lot of the time. And so what the strat is it's called dual dive skip. Essentially, what normally happens is you would normally go up the building, take a red ring, and Shadow would be forced into a diving section where he dives 3 times and then lands on a road, chases Black Doom again, and then has another dive, then hits Black Doom, and then goes back into Rail Canyon. And so dual dive skip was originally found for wingless runs, where it would skip 2 of the 3 first dives, but with wings, it actually skips all 4. So, quad dive. We're calling this quad dive now. And so this strat is pretty easy, even if it's inconsistent. And when I say inconsistent, I mean even identical task inputs gave differing results. It's bad. It's really bad. So the most consistent setup I have for it, I may mess this up a fair amount of times, because again, inconsistent. Take this leftmost rail, just like you would with the ESP, but instead, we're going to land on the second half of the rail, and just before the spring, we're gonna jump early. Make sure we're boosting first. We're gonna boost and then jump off early, neutral jump into the spring, and then once we get to the top of the building, just gonna mash jump and hope we get it. I'm holding back here as well, but you didn't have to. Mashing jump. Please be nice to me, game. And I didn't get it. This is a re-recording because the original attempt didn't get it. Again, pretty inconsistent strat, unfortunately. And I got it. Okay, so once you get that double jump, you want to fly backwards and land on this building. And now what we're going to do is we're going to ground boost off the building and spear glide to maintain that momentum to the left. Using reset camera to make sure I can see. And then this road is where we want to land. This road in front of us. Nice. And now what we're going to do, now that we're here, we're going to use this pillar as a lineup and this building as a lineup. You're going to want to jump basically straight forward at this section and then just spear glide. And you want to slowly edge in upright, but don't go too far, otherwise you'll get pulled into the final dive. Just keep going forward. And when Rail Canyon pops in, turn fully right, reset your camera, and then air boost and spear glide again. And that's it. You have skipped a fair amount of the level. Again, this strat is very inconsistent, so have fun with that. If you can find a way to make this 100% consistent, I will be eternally grateful to you, but currently we don't have one. Okay, so now it's time for possibly the stupidest time save in the entire game. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have wings ready before the cutscene where Shadow would normally get wings, but because we already have them and this is a replay, he doesn't get them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause near the very end just before the dash pad, and I am going to switch FPS from 120 FPS to 30 FPS. And keep in mind that this also, I believe it works on consoles that can switch from 60 to 30, like the PS5 and the Xbox Series, but it doesn't work on Switch as far as I know because it's 30 locked. And I'm pretty sure the old gen consoles like PS4 and Xbox One are also 30 locked. So this doesn't work on those, unfortunately. Okay, so we're gonna wait until we're at the very end, pause, switch from 120 to 30, and what this should do is just launch us up. Shadow just goes straight up, and then we're gonna switch the FPS back so that I don't hurt my eyes. And now we can just fly to the end of the level. I'm being so dead serious, that's it. And you might be wondering, Esther, why don't you go for this in runs? This seems both incredibly easy and incredibly time safe. And you would be wrong about both of those, unfortunately. It's not actually that much time save in an RTA context, because switching to 30 FPS and then switching back from 30 FPS actually takes a fair amount of time. This trick without those saves about 30 seconds, 25 maybe, but with those, it only saves like 6 seconds with that menuing because of how long it takes. And another thing is that even though it does look pretty easy and the inputs are pretty simple, the timing is on the pause is deceptively difficult. Because it's not just a case of pausing when you're generally late on the path and then switching FPS. There are set positions that will give you the fling if you pause at those positions and switch FPS. And there are certain positions that won't give you the fling if you pause at those positions that switch FPS. And it's not just a single binary, before doesn't work, after does work. It is specific positions in between. It's a pain. And so because of that, and because of the significant time loss incurred from switching FPS to 120 and 230 and then back to 120 and not even getting the actual skip, I don't go for it currently. But I mean, the inputs themselves are pretty easy. So if you can figure out a good way to time it, then yeah, by all means go for it. Okay, so now what I'm going for, this is the big one. This is the one the whole video has been building up to. So you know how at the end of this level there's like a 1.5 minute section where Black Doom is all like, the promised time will arrive once more or whatever, and he takes you through this whole Radical Highway section and it's kind of slow and kind of boring, you just kind of hold forward. What if we didn't do that? So this has a fair amount of steps to it, and I am actually going to go over something first before I actually go for the skip. First, I need to get to physics. I'm using Zanz's method. I'll put the link to it in the description. And I messed it up. Great showcase of Zanz's method. Let's go. I got it. Cool. So now I'm going to... Okay, so with wings, and I think with 2 physics in general, there are two... This isn't a wings thing, actually. It is a 2 physics thing. I messed up my wording. With 2 physics, there's 2 main types of air boosts you can get. You can get one that's very restricted and slows you down, and you can get one that isn't and lets you maintain speed perfectly and it's with a spear. This really all depends on your spear gliding and your spear timing. So I'm going to show the bad one first, which is just this. You see Shadow barely moves. It's a bit hard to control because he's zooming. You see how Shadow barely moved, kind of looks like he was getting held back almost, or even if I... Like, that's a pretty blatant example of a bad one, right? And a good one is when you time your spear almost perfectly with an air boost. I'm going to call this a perfect tube spear, just for simplicity's sake. And that's an example of a perfect tube spear. See how I went a lot further, felt a lot less restricted? That's what we're going to need, right? And now on to the actual skip. This is editing me popping in to say that Alpha Dolphin, yes, the AGDQ Alpha Dolphin told me to call this skip Esther Tour. I'm not going to call it that, but I just feel like that should be documented. Okay, so you've just homing attacked this CC capsule, and now what you're going to do to get set up for the skip, make sure you keep this chaos control. You're going to need it. So first, we're going to land on this wall in front of us, the one that the missiles are covering up. And just ground boost up. Just let Shadow just go. Then we're going to boost across this platform and stop boosting a bit near the end just so that we can regain our boost. And then we're going to jump left and triple spear glide. It doesn't have to be a perfect tube spear, but it can be. But yeah, triple air boost and spear glide to the left. Now Shadow should, you can see, I don't know, what is he doing? You can see here Shadow's kind of messed up. It's because he's landed on an invis wall. So now what we're going to do is we're going to ground boost off this invis wall again, and we'll get taken up again. Now we just keep going up. What you want to do, this little guy right here is a very useful guide. You want to be about lined up with like here slightly to the right of this section. You can do it when in line with this section, but it's easier to do it about here. So I'm going to hold left until I'm in line with that, still boosting. Okay, cool. Now I'm in line. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold the boost until I see a jutting out piece of geometry that you can just go straight through. And then once I see that, I'm going to start spear gliding. So this is what you want to use as your trigger to stop. And I'm actually going to explain everything now because I need to focus for getting this. So what I'm going to do after this, I'm going to stop ground boosting and keep spear gliding. Then everything after this point has got to be perfect tube spears. Otherwise, you will not have enough speed. So the plan is to spear glide and then forward perfect spear. And then there's going to be a tube upcoming, which is where we're aiming for. That removes tube physics, which is useful. The plan here is to effectively build up tube speed by ground boosting, and then use the tube physics removal trigger to get rid of the looking direction lockout. Because if you don't do that, you won't be able to dodge an invisible death plane. So we need to do that. So that's the plan, basically. We're going to forward air boost into the tube, and then just as we're about to hit it, we're going to up left perfect tube spear off of the tube. We kind of want to graze it. And if you did it right, you should have almost all your speed, and you should be able to turn directly left. So let's see if I can get it. Hello, this is editing me popping in because I just realized I missed a fair amount in the original recording. This is a lot to go over, okay? First thing is on this slide upwards. Slide this boost upwards. Your height is going to vary a lot. And generally, you can, with about any height, you can get the skip. Like, your height is not going to necessarily prevent you from getting the skip, but it will change how you do it slightly. Generally, the higher up you go, so this is a very high launch. The higher up you go, the earlier you want to stop ground boosting, and the lower down you are, the later you want to stop ground boosting. Because the plan is to fall, and when you're higher up, you need to fall more, which means you need to start falling earlier, whereas if you're lower down, you can fall later because you don't need to fall as much. That's basically it. And second of all, I should mention what the actual trigger is. It is around here-ish. It's a bit... I'm not sure, like, the exact visuals of it, but it's generally below this dash pad. I think it actually does include the dash pad, but if you try going here, if you try grazing off of this area, you will bonk onto the dash pad and lose all your speed. So you want to be below it. So around this general area where my mouse is, that's where you want to be. Anyway, back to the video. Now, I didn't get my first air boost there was actually not great, unfortunately. But that's basically what it's going to look like. And now I'm going to keep going left. And just go generally upright once you, it's that leftmost floating thing. I actually have no idea what it's meant to be. Yeah, you want to, once you're in line with that, that's when you could start boosting forward and boosting forward right to make it to the Radical Highway section. You're going to see Radical Highway in the distance, so just keep going. Use Chaos Control to help you out. Now, it might be a little hard to see, but if you saw there was a very slight glint of purple down there, that's the damaging part of the slide. That's where we're generally aiming for. Above that, but that's the general position that we're aiming for. I might actually be able to get it even with low speed. And also, you see these little, again, very hard to see. Compression might kill this. Apologies. But yeah, there should be some little twisting buildings around this area. That's, again, a good sign that the slide is there, and that's what you want to be aiming for. And now, how you re-enter is difficult, basically. It depends on situation. Generally, you want to be pretty high up. That's the main goal, because there are pretty big invisible walls and pretty big death planes, so you can't just shoot straight onto the slide and land directly on it. That won't work, unfortunately. You have to land from above. Now, wings have been taken for me, which means I'm above the slide. I still have my double jump, mind you. I'm going to use that to land on the slide. And I'm here. And that's the skip, basically. This is deceptively difficult. It took me a while to learn this, like actual human days. But I have a lot of practice with it now, so it's not too bad. I would recommend just really, taking the time to learn this. This is going to take a lot of time to learn. If you need help with anything in this video, but specifically this, especially, feel free to ping me on Discord or ask in the Shadow Help channel in the Shadow Generations Discord server, which will be in the description. Feel free to ask me for help or ask anyone for help, because this is difficult, again, as I said. And I'm willing to help because I have all this knowledge. I would like to share it with other people. But yeah, once you land on this building, it should be pretty obvious, but you can just play the levels normal. Fun fact about this skip that I will show before I end the video. Because you avoid the Radical Highway entry trigger, you avoid the CC lock trigger, and you also kind of mess up the cutscenes a little. So Shadow just kind of stays like that.
Won't let him escape again.
Yeah, he's just kind of like that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Goodbye. Okay, I know I just ended the video, but I forgot to record this originally. There is a backup strat for this skip. Let's say for whatever reason you don't think you're going to be able to make it to the sliding section, you can instead make it to the spring that lets you enter the cutscene for the sliding section. And what you want to do there, this twisting building, it's got a helipad on it, but you can't see it. That's the first building of the sliding section. And if I'm gonna be so honest, I'm not too sure where the like a good landmark is for this. So I'm just gonna go low. Yeah, I found the landmark. It's these twisting guys. This is the landmark you want to use. And I died because I overshot slightly, but just you can land there. Just a quick little addendum. I don't go for it. I'm not very good at it, so apologies for the not great explanation. But if that's something you want to try, go for it. It does lose like 10 seconds. But, you know, if you want to go for it, that's fair. Maybe more like 15, actually. I'm not sure. Yeah. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, when you're going for the fast skip, if you are too high above the slide when it ends, if you fly over, like, too high over the slide at the ending, you will skip the trigger that makes Black Doom land on the final platform, and you will soft lock. So don't do that, please. For safety's sake, it's best to just land on the slide and just do the slide cutscene. You can skip it if you're low to the ground, like how Party Time does, but, you know, you don't want to risk overshooting and soft locking. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the video over for realsies.